Behind closed doors, the morning after their hasty courthouse wedding. Nora stood in the marble foyer of Vikram's penthouse, still wearing the simple white dress she'd purchased the day before. Her single suitcase looked pitiful against the opulent backdrop of crystal chandeliers and modern art pieces that probably cost more than her annual income. "Prisha will show you to your room," Vikram said, nodding toward an elegant older woman, who Nora learned was the housekeeper. "I have meetings until evening. Make yourself comfortable." Before Nora could respond, he was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of his expensive cologne. This was their dynamic, efficient, minimal, transactional. Paperwork had been signed. Her father's surgery scheduled for the following week, and the charade officially begun. "This way, madam," Prisha said with a knowing smile that made Nora wonder exactly what the woman had been told about their arrangement. The guest suite was larger than Nora's entire apartment, with floor-tisseling windows overlooking the city skyline. A walk-in closet stood mostly empty, save for a few designer dresses with tags still attached. "Mr. Rai thought you might need these for certain events," Prisha explained. "His grandmother will be arriving tomorrow morning." Nora's stomach tightened. "Tomorrow? I thought we'd have more time to... prepare." Her health declined more rapidly than expected. Prisha's expression softened. "Don't worry, Dadiji is kind. She just wants to see her grandson happy." After Prisha left, Nora unpacked her meager belongings: worn jeans, photography equipment, and the framed photo of her and her father from their last hiking trip. She placed it on the nightstand, a small piece of reality in this surreal situation. That evening, Nora wandered into the kitchen, hungry and unsure of the protocols. She found Vikram there, suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up as he stirred something on the stove. "You cook?" she asked, startling him. Occasionally he gestured to the pot. "My mother's recipe for khichdi, comfort food." The domesticity of the moment felt strangely intimate. "I thought you'd have a chef, only for events. I prefer my privacy." He spooned the fragrant rice and lentil mixture into 2 bowls. "You should eat. We have a lot to discuss before my grandmother arrives." Over dinner, Vikram outlined their story. They'd met 6 months ago at a wildlife conservation fundraiser, bonded over shared values, and had a whirlwind romance culminating in a private ceremony. He spoke with such precision that Nora almost believed it herself. "What about real details?" Nora asked. "Favorite foods? Morning routines? Things married people would know about each other." Something shifted in Vikram's expression. "Black coffee, no sugar. One run 5 miles every morning, regardless of weather. I'm allergic to shellfish and can't stand the smell of lavender." He paused. "Your turn. Earl Grey tea with honey. I talk in my sleep sometimes. I'm terrified of heights despite my love for nature photography. And I always watch the sunrise on my father's birthday, April 17th. Vikram nodded, committing these details to memory. "Speaking of your father, how is he? Stable? Hopeful now that the surgery is scheduled?" Nora hesitated. "Thank you for that." "It's business," he reminded her, though his tone lacked conviction. The next morning, Nora woke to find Vikram adjusting her photographs on the walls of their shared living space, pictures she'd taken of wildlife and landscapes. "Framed. My grandmother will expect personal touches," he explained, not meeting her eyes. "These are excellent, by the way." Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Vikram's posture immediately stiffened. "Remember," he whispered, taking Nora's hand. "For the next 4 weeks, this is real." The door opened to reveal a diminutive woman with silver hair and bright eyes that missed nothing. Dodiji, as Nora would come to call her, studied them both, before breaking into a wide smile. "So this is the woman who finally captured my Vikram's heart," she said in accented English, reaching for Nora's hands. "Let me look at you, Betty." As Dadiji embraced her, Nora caught Vikram's eye over his grandmother's shoulder. His gratitude was palpable. But something else lingered there, to a vulnerability she hadn't expected to see in the composed businessman who had orchestrated this entire arrangement. In that moment, Nora realized this charade would be far more complicated than she'd anticipated. She would be living behind closed doors with a man whose real self remained carefully guarded, playing a role that felt increasingly less like acting with each passing hour. The desperate agreement. The autumn rain pelted the hospital windows as Nora Jenkins stared at the medical bill in her trembling hands. $63,000. The amount seemed to mock her with each passing second. Her father, the only family. She had left, needed a specialized heart procedure, and the insurance company had found a loophole to deny coverage. "I'm sorry, Miss Jenkins, but we require payment before we can schedule the operation," the billing administrator said, not unkindly, but firmly. "Perhaps a payment plan. The doctor said he needs the surgery within 2 weeks," Nora interrupted, her voice cracking. "A payment plan won't help if he's—" She couldn't finish the sentence. The administrator gave her a sympathetic look that Nora had grown to hate. Sympathy wouldn't save her father. At 28, with a modest income from wildlife photography and freelance assignments, she had nowhere near enough savings for this kind of emergency. As she left the billing office, Nora collided with a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit, her folder of medical documents scattered across the sterile hospital floor. "I'm so sorry," she mumbled, crouching to gather the papers. The man knelt beside her, helping collect the fallen documents. Movements were precise, deliberate, when he handed her the last page of the bill with its impossible sum. His dark eyes lingered on the figure. "Thank you," Nora said, clutching the folder to her chest. "Miss Jenkins?" a voice called from behind. "The hospital's financial counselor? Have some additional options we could discuss." Nora excused herself, following the counselor only to learn that these options were merely high-interest loans that would bury her in debt for decades. Later that evening, she sat in the hospital cafeteria nursing a cold coffee. The man from earlier approached her table. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. Nora nodded, too exhausted to question why this stranger wanted to sit with her. "Vikram Rai," he introduced himself, extending a hand. His accent carried hints of his Indian heritage, though it was subtle, refined by years in America. "Nora Jenkins," she replied, shaking his hand briefly. "I couldn't help overhearing your situation earlier," Vikram said, his expression unreadable. "Your father needs a procedure that insurance won't cover." Nora stiffened. "I don't need charity." "Not offering charity." His voice was cool, businesslike. "I'm offering a transaction? Excuse me?" Vikram leaned forward, lowering his voice. "My grandmother is dying. Her final wish is to see me married before she passes. For cultural reasons, this is extremely important to her." Nora frowned, confused about where this was heading. "I need a wife temporarily," he continued. "For weeks maximum. In exchange, I'll cover your father's medical expenses. All of them." The cafeteria seemed to spin around her. "You want me to marry you? A complete stranger?" "A business arrangement," Vikram clarified, "nothing more. No romantic expectations. Separate living spaces in my home. After my grandmother passes, or the 4 weeks conclude, whichever comes first, we quietly divorce." "This is insane," Nora whispered. Yet she didn't get up to leave. Perhaps he agreed. "But your father gets his surgery, and my grandmother gets her wish. We both solve our immediate problems." Nora studied him carefully. Early 30s, confident posture, a hint of weariness behind his composed exterior. "Why me? Why not hire an actress?" "My grandmother is perceptive. An actress might not be convincing enough." He paused. "You have integrity. I saw how you spoke to the hospital staff, respectful despite your frustration. That's the kind of person my grandmother would believe I'd choose." Was utterly absurd. Yet as Nora glanced at her father's room down the hall, the choice crystallized with brutal clarity. "If I agree, the money is paid directly to the hospital," she stated. "And everything in writing, reviewed by my lawyer?" Vikram nodded, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. "Of course, I'll have the papers drawn up tomorrow." And with that simple conversation over bad cafeteria coffee, Nora Jenkins agreed to become Mrs. Wright temporarily. Unexpected allies 3 days into their arrangement, Nora found herself seated beside Vikram at an elegant charity gala, wearing a midnight blue gown that complemented the subtle navy accents in his tuxedo. Dodici had insisted they attend, eager to show off her grandson's new bride to Boston's elite social circle. "X," Vikram murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "You look like you're facing a firing squad." "Easy for you to say," Nora whispered back. This is your world, not mine. His hand found hers under the table, a gesture meant for show but oddly comforting nonetheless. Just remember our story and be yourself. That's why I chose you, not Anne. Actress. Across the ballroom, Nora noticed a sharp-featured man watching them with undisguised interest. Who's that? Vikram's jaw tightened. Dominic Blackwood, my chief competitor. Ignore him. But ignoring proved impossible when Dominic approached. Their table during dessert, champagne flute in hand and smile not reaching his eyes. Vikram, what a surprise to see you with a wife no one knew existed until a week ago. His gaze shifted to Nora. Dominic Blackwood, Blackwood Investments, and you are? Nora Rai, she replied, the surname still foreign on her tongue. Pleasure. To meet you? Nora is a wildlife photographer, Vikram interjected. We met at the conservation fundraiser. Yes, I heard the charming story. Dominic swirled his champagne. Curious timing, though. Right before the Sundar acquisition votes. The board does love family men, don't they? Nora felt Vikram stiffen beside her. This wasn't just about his grandmother. There were business implications to their marriage that he hadn't disclosed. Our timing is our business, Dominic, Vikram replied coolly. If you'll excuse us. Later that night, as they drove home in tense silence, Nora finally spoke. You didn't tell me about the acquisition? Vikram's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. It wasn't relevant to our arrangement. It is if Dominic Blackwood is suspicious. Enough to investigate us. She turned to face him. I need to know what I've walked into, Vikram. He pulled the car into an empty viewpoint overlooking the city lights and killed the engine. Sundar Technologies is a company my father built from nothing. When he died, ownership split between me and investors. Blackwood has been trying to gain controlling interest for years. His voice grew quiet. If he succeeds, he'll dismantle it for parts, and 200 employees lose their jobs. And a married man looks more stable to the voting board, Nora concluded. My grandmother's wish was genuine, Vikram insisted. But yes, the timing served multiple purposes. Die. The following morning, Nora was having tea with Dodi G when the doorbell rang. She opened it to find Dominic Blackwood holding a bouquet of exotic flowers. For the new bride, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. May I come in? Before she could answer, Dodi G appeared behind her. Who is this, Betty? Dominic seized the opportunity, introducing himself and charming the elderly woman with practiced ease. Soon they were all seated in the living room, Dominic casually asking questions about Nora and Vikram's relationship. And where did you go on your first date? He inquired innocently. Nora realized with panic that they hadn't discussed this detail. Just as she opened her mouth to improvise, Dadaji chuckled. My grandson is hopeless at romance. It's probably something boring like dinner. Actually, Nora said, inspiration striking, he took me to photograph the bald eagles at Quabbin Reservoir at sunrise. He brought thermoses of chai and these little cardamom cookies. She smiled at the memory she was creating. It was perfect. Ain't. Vikram returned home that evening. Nora immediately told him about Dominic's visit. He's fishing for inconsistencies in our story. Instead of the anger she expected, Vikram looked impressed. The eagles at Quabbin was a nice touch. Very specific. Thought so? She replied with a small smile. Look, I didn't sign up for corporate espionage, but I also don't like being manipulated. If we're going to convince people, we need to be allies in this, not just contractor and client. Vikram studied her for a long moment. You're right. Extended his hand. Partners, then. As Nora shook his hand, something shifted between them, a new understanding, a shared purpose beyond their original agreement. They were no longer merely pretending to be a team, they were becoming one. The truth beneath 3 weeks into their arrangement, Nora woke to find a text from the hospital her father had developed complications after surgery. She rushed to his bedside, forgetting to leave a note in her panic. Hours later, she was startled to see Vikram striding down the hospital corridor, concern etched on his usually composed face. How did you know I was here? She asked, as he handed her a coffee. I called the hospital when you didn't answer your phone. He sat beside her, their shoulders almost touching. How is he? Stable now. The doctors say he'll recover, but it was close. Her voice cracked. the strain of the past weeks finally catching up to her. Without hesitation, Vikram put his arm around her, and Nora leaned into his warmth, no longer caring that there was no audience to perform for. "I've been so focused on the arrangement that I've barely visited him," she whispered. "What kind of daughter does that make me?" "One who's doing everything possible to save him," Vikram replied, his usual detachment nowhere in evidence. "He's lucky to have you." When they returned home late that night, Dadiji was waiting up, her wise eyes taking in their exhausted faces. "Family emergencies show the true nature of a marriage," she said cryptically before retiring to her room. The following evening, Nora was organizing her camera equipment when she found an envelope that had slipped under the door documents from Dominic Blackwood, revealing that Vikram's company was being investigated for financial irregularities, with suggestions that his hasty marriage was an attempt to distract from potential scandal. Hands shaking, she confronted Vikram in his home office. "Is this true? Are you using this marriage to cover up something illegal?" His face darkened. "Where did you get that?" Blackwood had it delivered. "Answer the question," Vikram took the papers, scanning them quickly. "These allegations are fabricated. Blackwood is desperate. The vote is in 3 days." "Then why does he seem so confident?" Nora pressed. "There's something you're not telling me." Vikram's composure finally cracked, because he knows about Tehran. Vikram moved to the window, his reflection fragmented in the rain-streaked glass. 5 years ago, I was negotiating a deal there. There was a situation, a local official expecting bribes. I refused. His voice grew distant. The next day, there was an accident. A young woman, an interpreter for our team, was critically injured. Nora's breath caught. "Did you know?" He cut in sharply. "But I should have protected her better. Blackwood somehow found out and has been implying I was responsible." His shoulders sagged. "The woman recovered, but I've been sending anonymous payments for her medical care ever since." Suddenly, many things made sense. His initial reaction at the hospital when he saw Nora's medical bills. His unexpected understanding of her situation. "Your grandmother doesn't know," Nora realized. "She knows something happened that changed me. Not the details." He turned to face her. The marriage suggestion was hers, but the timing, ... he trailed off, "was to protect your reputation before Blackwood could weaponize the story," Nora finished. "I should have told you everything." His voice was barely audible. "I'm sorry." At the night, unable to sleep, Nora found Dodiji in the kitchen making tea. "Troubled hearts make for restless nights," the older woman observed, pushing a steaming cup toward Nora. "Did you know?" Nora asked. "About the real reason for this marriage?" Dodiji smiled sadly. "I know my grandson carries guilt that doesn't belong to him. And I know when he looks at you, he forgets to carry it." She patted Nora's hand. "Our arrangement ends in 4 days, but some arrangements become choices, Beta. Remember that." Later, as dawn broke over the city, Nora found Vikram on the balcony, watching the sunrise. "April 17th, he said without turning. "Your father's birthday." The fact that he remembered such a small detail from their first real conversation struck Nora more powerfully than any grand gesture could have. "I made some calls," Vikram continued. "The interpreter from Tehran has agreed to make a statement clearing my name. Blackwood's leverage is gone." "It's good," Nora said, joining him at the railing. "It means our arrangement has served its purpose." His voice was carefully neutral. "For both of us." As they stood side by side watching the new day break, Nora realized that beneath the contract and convenience, beyond the pretense and performance, something genuine had taken root. Neither of them had anticipated or knew quite how to acknowledge as their time together drew to a close. Beyond the contractin', the final morning of their arrangement, Nora packed her suitcase with methodical precision. The designer dresses remained hanging in the closet. They belonged to a life that had never really been hers. Only her camera equipment and the few personal items she'd brought seemed real now. Downstairs, Vikram was on a conference call, his voice carrying the authoritative tone she'd grown accustomed to. The Sundar acquisition vote had gone in his favor. Dominic Blackwood's schemes had unraveled. Everything had worked out exactly as planned. So why did completing their agreement feel like loss? Dottie G found her in the kitchen, staring absently into a cup of cold tea. "So you are leaving," the older woman stated, no question in her tone. "The 4 weeks are up," Nora replied simply. "Your health has improved. My father is recovering. The arrangement is complete." Dottie G settled into the chair opposite her. "When my husband and I married, it was arranged by our families. 2 strangers bound by contract and tradition." Her weathered hand smoothed an invisible wrinkle in the tablecloth. "We learned to love each other through daily choices, not grand passions. Sometimes, Betty, the arrangement is just the beginning." Before Nora could respond, Vikram appeared in the doorway. "The car is ready when you are," he said, expression carefully neutral. The drive to Nora's apartment was silent, weighted with unspoken words. When they arrived, Vikram insisted on carrying her suitcase up the 3 flights of stairs. Her tiny apartment, once a comforting haven, now seemed shabby and confining after weeks in his penthouse. "The final divorce papers will be ready next week," Vikram said, placing her suitcase by the door. "My lawyer will contact yours." Nora nodded, suddenly unable to meet his eyes. "Thank you for everything." He lingered, hands in his pockets, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Your father's follow-up appointments, they're covered. And I've set up a foundation grant for your wildlife photography. No strings attached." "Vikram, it's not charity," he said quickly. "Your work deserves to be seen." When he finally left, the apartment felt emptier than it ever had before. 2 days later, Nora was reviewing her photos from a morning shoot at the harbor when her phone rang the hospital. Her father needed another procedure, minor but necessary. As she sat in the waiting room, a familiar figure appeared with 2 cups of coffee. "Black coffee, no sugar," she said, accepting the cup Vikram offered. "Earl Grey with honey wasn't available," he explained, sitting beside her. "How is he? He'll be fine." She studied him, noting the shadows under his eyes. "How did you know we were here?" "I didn't." His admission hung between them. "I've been coming by each day to check on him." Something warm unfurled in Nora's chest, and Dottie G returned to India yesterday. She said America didn't agree with her after all. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Though she mentioned missing her new granddaughter-in-law, they sat in comfortable silence until the doctor emerged with good news. As they walked out of the hospital together, the setting sun painted the sky in hues of amber and rose. "I tore up the divorce papers," Vikram said suddenly, stopping in the middle of the sidewalk. "I can have new ones drawn up if that's what you want." Nora turned to face him. "What do you want, Vikram? There's no business arrangements, no obligations, just the truth." For the first time since she'd known him, Vikram looked completely unguarded. "I want to take you to photograph eagles at Quabbin Reservoir at sunrise. I want to bring thermoses of chai and those little cardamom cookies you invented in our fake history." His voice grew softer. "Want to see if what began as an arrangement might become something real." Nora thought of her father, safely recovering, of Dottie G's knowing smile, of the morning she'd found Vikram watching the sunrise on her father's birthday. "I don't think we need the papers," she said finally. "Fake or otherwise. Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Uncertainty and hope mingled in his expression. Nora reached for his hand, twining her fingers with his. "I'm saying some arrangements become choices, and this is mine." As they walked hand in hand into the evening light, Nora realized that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings, even those born of desperation and convenience, could lead to the most authentic endings. Their story had started with a contract, but it would continue with a choice, renewed each day beyond the boundaries of any agreement they had signed.